Hi guys, in this video I cover the if-else-if condition. I go over the syntax and I provide an example. The syntax is similar to the if-else condition. The difference is that the else part has a condition associated with it. Let's take a look how this works. Initially, the very first condition is checked. If this condition is true, the first then block is executed. If this condition is false, however, the condition of the following else is executed. If this condition is true, the second then block is executed. Now there's no limit to the number of else if blocks and conditions that we can have. We could have else if conditions 3, 4, 5, and so on, up to condition n. And then here we have a then block n. The way this works is whenever we have a if-else-if condition is that only at most one then block is executed. Essentially, it checks these conditions until it finds the first one that is true. Once a condition is true, it executes the statements in the associated then block, and after that it follows and continues execution after the entire if-else-if condition. If none of these conditions are true, none of the then blocks are executed. Now, optionally, there can also be an else block. This is essentially a block of statements that is executed if all these conditions are false. And again, this is optional. Now, what is the difference if we leave this keyword out? If we put everything if? If we have everything just following if, these are just simple if conditions that are happening one after another. And the difference is that potentially multiple then blocks are executed. It would check this condition. If it's true, it executes the then block. If it's false, it does not execute the then block. But regardless what the outcome of this condition is, it will continue checking the following condition and the following condition. So there's a big difference if you write else if versus just if. Else if is always just you want one of these conditions executed and only at most one. Let's take a look at an example. In this example, I want to check a grade, and a grade is A, or an A is between 90 to 100. If it's between 80 to 90, it's a B. If it's between 70 to 80, it's a C. And if it's between 60 and 70, it's a D. And everything below 60 is an F. So I want to write conditions, and whatever the score here falls in, remember there can only be one. It can never result in A and C. So only one of these is true. So it's a good example to use an if-else-if condition. Initially, I declare a variable named score. I write a statement to enter the score, and then I read that score into the variable. Now that I have the score stored in the same named variable, I want to use the first condition. And initially I check if the score is above 100. In that case, I output a statement, invalid, the score is too high. Now, if this is not the case, so if this is false, the score has to be 100 or below 100. So next I check else if the score is above or equal to 90. At this point, I know the previous condition was false, so it has to be 100 or below. And with this condition, if this is true, I know it is between 90 up to 100. And here I output grade A. Now, if this one is false as well, I add another else if condition. Here I check if the score is above or equal to 80. And again, in this case, I know the previous conditions were all false. So I know it has to be below 90 and it has to be above or equal to 80. So here I can output the grade B. I do the same with C. C is any score above or equal to 70 and below 80. So here I output grade C. And next I check grade D, which is above or equal to 60. And I output grade D. And then I add another else if condition. This condition checks if the score is above or equal to 0. The reason I do this is that if a user enters a negative score, I also output an error message. So here I know it has to be below 60, but it could be also negative. So I want to add the check that it has to be between 0 and 60. In this case, I output grade F. And then the last option, I add the else block. If none of these applied, I know the only score left is something below 0. So I also output invalid. Your score is negative. Okay, let's run this program. So when I click play, I get prompted for the score. And if I enter 110, for example, it will read that value into the score variable, compare 110 to 100, and since 110 is larger than 100, it'll output the statement invalid. This is what we see down here. Let me add a breakpoint here, and let's walk through some of the steps with another example input. So in this case, let's say I enter 75. When I hit enter, it will here check the first condition. You can see the score is 75 compared to 100. This one is false. If I click next, it will now check the condition here, 75 larger or equal to 90. This one is also false. It'll check the next condition, 75 larger or equal to 80. This one is also false. So here we can see it continues checking until this condition here, which results in true. 75 is larger than 70. This is true. It enters the then block, and now it starts executing the statements here. There's a single statement, so we'll only execute and output grade C. It outputs grade C here, and then it reached the end of the block. When I click next, it jumped to the end to the return 0 statement, and then it completed the program. And this is the output. So if I would have done, for example, if I would have done just if statements without the else, it would continue checking even if when this one matched to true. It would continue checking the remaining ones if I did not have the else. So there is a big difference if you just write if versus if you write else as well. For the else block again, it will check each condition until the very first one that is true, like we just saw with the 75. It'll enter that block, execute the statements in the block, and then continue with the statements at the end after the entire if else if block. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching.